Happy Thursday, friends. It's Neil Adler with another edition of Syracuse Central via the Fan Arch Network. And we're 2 days from Syracuse football starting its 2025 season in Atlanta against number 24 Tennessee. Steve Angeli will be the starting quarterback for Syracuse this season. Um, and I came across something that was kind of interesting. And as always with these segments, drop some comments for me. Let me know what you think. This is all about us engaging with one another and sharing opinions and thoughts. And so I saw two things regarding quarterbacks in college football this year. One was a top 50 preseason rank. Again, these rankings are preseason. They don't mean anything. It's just, we're just having fun here. We're just talking. CBS Sports came out with a top 50 preseason ranking of the top 50 quarterbacks. And I believe ESPN also had something, I think it was yesterday as well, on the top 25 quarterbacks. Hope I got that right. Okay, the bottom line here is that Steve Angeli wasn't on either list. And I wouldn't necessarily expect him to be labeled as a top 25 quarterback ahead of the season, given that he, hasn't played a ton in college. But top 50, really? And I'm a homer, I get it. I'm a homer. I'm a total homer. Okay. But looking over that, and again, this is nothing against CBS Sports. Looking over that list, I mean, there's quarterbacks on there from Old Dominion and University of Texas San Antonio and Ohio and some other schools that could be quality mid-majors or whatever. And I'm not hating on those schools, but you're really telling me Steve Angeli isn't as good as those quarterbacks? And so, people could counter, whether they're fellow Syracuse fans or just fans of the sport, and say, well, Steve hasn't played a ton in college. Okay, yeah, that's totally fair. He hasn't. But guess who's on the list? CJ Carr, who I believe is a true freshman or a redshirt freshman. I think he's a true freshman. But anyway, he's played a lot less than Steve Angeli. He's going to be Notre Dame's quarterback. And by all accounts, he's going to be, I'm sure, very good. He was named the starting quarterback by Marcus Freeman. Notre Dame went to the championship game last year, and they're ranked in the top 5 or 6 preseason polls. But what's the reason for putting in, and again, this isn't a shot at CJ Carr, but why would you put in CJ Carr or someone like him who has never played in college? Like, I think Bryce Underwood, the Michigan phenom, is on the both. He's at least on the CBS Sports list. Like, I think he was in the 30s, and he was the number 1 national prospect in the class last year. So fine, I get it. But I guess the larger point is, you put someone on this list that's never played a college game, but you don't have Steve Angeli, who has played in college and did play meaningful snaps last year, especially in that CFP semifinal win that Notre Dame had over Penn State when Riley Leonard was in concussion protocol in the second quarter. So, again, do these lists mean anything? No, it's just, we're just talking. But I think the larger kind of thing that I'm trying to get at here is, are we sleeping on Steve Angeli? Is the national and or ACC media not super high on him? Is that because of he's unproven, so to speak? I think he's going to be really good. He beat out Ricky Collins, who was named he's the transfer from LSU, and he was named the starter in the spring, but that was before Angeli transferred. So, again, the games are played on the field. We'll know more on Saturday. Angeli is a redshirt junior. He will be up against a Tennessee defense that is going to probably be one of the best in the country yet again this year. So, hey, listen, if he knocks it out of the park and Tennessee or Syracuse beats Tennessee on a neutral at a neutral site, he'll start to get into those quarterback rankings. But I guess it's, again, I'm a homer. I'm an SU alum. I cover Syracuse for various outlets, including having this show here. Are people sleeping on Angeli? Are people sleeping on Syracuse? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, again, the schedule is tough. Replacing Kyle McCord, replacing a couple of really good wide receivers, Gadsden, several key guys on defense. There's a lot of talent on this team, but it's unproven talent, young talent, tough schedule. So we'll see how it all goes. I don't. I said this. I think it was either yesterday or 2 days ago. I don't think Angeli's going to throw for 4,700 yards, but I think he can be a good quarterback. And if he has a solid season and Syracuse wins 8, 9 games, beats some other ranked teams, gets into a bowl again, is ranked at the end of the year, hey, maybe he goes to the NFL. We'll see. In any event, I think he should be putting away my orange colored glasses. See, these aren't orange colored, right? I've always got orange colored glasses on. But putting away those glasses for a second, I think Steve Angeli should be on a top 50 list. I'll just leave it at that, okay? All right. This next story is, this is an ongoing thing. The whole conference realignment, chatter, buzz, whatever. It's not just a Syracuse story, but it could impact Syracuse. And it stems from the fact that I believe it was Maryland's athletic director said that he thought, I can't remember where I saw it. It was somewhere online. He said in some podcast interview or some interview somewhere, I should know more of that. But he said that he thinks in the next couple of years that the Big Ten will have 20 teams. Okay. And then Brett McMurphy, who is one of the top college football insiders out there, and he's at On3 now. He said on a podcast yesterday that he thinks that the SEC and Big Ten definitely could be, in the coming years at 20 and maybe up to 24. Okay. And then McMurphy also said that he thought in terms of potential next expansion targets for either the Big Ten or the SEC could be two ACC schools. Not Syracuse. North Carolina and Virginia, which I've seen reports like that in the past. But it's interesting because all the stuff about the ACC and they had some legal skirmishes and it looks like they're stable for right now, given their media rights deal and those legal battles between the ACC and Clemson and Florida State, were settled. But you never know. This stuff could always, teams can move, things can happen. Certainly, I don't think teams are leaving the ACC anytime like in the immediate future, given exit fees and all that stuff and their media rights deal with ESPN. But if I'm not mistaken, those exit fees do go down at some period. So we'll see in the next couple of years. Then there's always the topic of Notre Dame, which is in the ACC for a lot of its sports, but remains an independent in football. And I don't think Notre Dame's ever going to. So, like the last story, drop me a comment. Let me know. Do you think that Notre Dame would ever? What scenario would have to happen for Notre Dame to join a conference in football? Because they have their own deal with NBC. They're looking, they have, getting the playoff, that's no issue. And now with the seeding being changed to straight up based on the CFP rankings, they can be a top 4 seed and have a first round bye. Last year in the 12 team, it was the 4 highest ranked conference champions. So the best they could be the number 1 team in the country last year. And the best they could get was the 5 seed, which is kind of stupid. But anyway, this year. So, the CFP, no problem. The NBC, the television deal, no problem. Sorry, a little water there. They're in the ACC for other sports. So why would they go? What would cause that to happen? Any event, we'll see. I don't see any of this stuff, but it comes up, and I guess another thing. Drop me another comment here. In a couple of years, hypothetically, if the ACC implodes or maybe it's on okay footing, but like teams are getting poached. Let's say the SEC Big Ten, like McMurphy said, could go to 20 or 24. So, assumably they would look at teams from the ACC and or the Big 12. Where do you think Syracuse would land? Or would Syracuse try and go back to the Big East and have a Big East conference that has some sort of basketball focus, but also has football team? I don't know how that would all work because let's be honest, even though Syracuse is still a bigger brand in basketball than football, um, football drives the ship for all these schools based on television money. And other revenue considerations with the playoff and whatnot. So I just don't know. It would stink if Syracuse down the road, if the ACC does kind of crumble up a little bit like the Pac-12 did, and a bunch of their schools went to the SEC and or Big Ten. Is Syracuse not have a chair, so to speak, when the music stops? Um, I don't know. I mean, the Big Ten has Rutgers, which I guess is kind of the New York media market, but it's Rutgers. No disrespect to Rutgers. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see how that. It'd be interesting. It would be kind of ironic if the first teams, if ACC teams did go to those other two leagues at some point, and the first two weren't Clemson and Florida State, given they had sued the ACC to get out. That would be kind of ironic, and I'd be fine with that because they thought their stuff didn't smell bad, or what's the cliche? I'm getting that wrong, but you know what I'm saying. They thought they were hot stuff, and Florida State was 2-10 last year. Clemson, no joke in football. And they've been good in basketball recently, so not going to hate on them. But, they also sued the ACC, and then I think the ACC countersued, blah, blah, blah. So we'll see. It's an ongoing thing that we're going to follow. But definitely let me know if you think, where you think Syracuse could end up. I mean, I know in basketball, like Coach K, and I think even Rick Pitino, at least recently, excuse me, both said, the ongoing idea being thrown out of the ACC and the Big East merging. And again, that's great for basketball, but how does that work for football? Because none of the programs that are currently in the Big East have, well, most of them don't have Division I football team or FBS football teams. Most of them. Obviously UConn does, but they're an independent. So I don't know how that would work, but we'll see. We'll keep our eyes on that. But I did think it was interesting that those first two ACC teams that were talked about as potentially moving on would be North Carolina and Virginia. I mean, I get it. North Carolina is a huge brand in basketball. They got Belichick there now in football. It's a huge university. They're both really good academic schools. Virginia, obviously, Tony Bennett's no longer there, but they've had a good quality basketball program, won the title in 2019. Football, okay, but it's a really quality school. So, all right, we're going to move on here to, we gave an update yesterday about the practice, or excuse me, the NFL cut deadline on Tuesday at 4 p.m. and which guys were safe, so to speak, and which guys weren't. And I'm going to just follow that up today with some more news. Slightly encouraging. You don't want to necessarily be on the practice squad, but it's better to be on the practice squad than not be on any squad. So a couple of guys that have cleared waivers and will go to practice squads that we're seeing reported. So Kyle McCord, he's going to remain with Philadelphia, former quarterback for Syracuse and Ohio State, and he's going to remain with Philadelphia. Jackson Meeks is going to stay with Detroit. And Meeks was really awesome in the preseason. And he was an all-ACC wide receiver this past year. Again, I had hoped that once Philadelphia traded for Sam Howell, I didn't think Kyle McCord was going to remain on the 53-man roster for the Eagles. But I'm glad he's going to stay there. And Meeks, we'll see what happens. But I feel like whether it's with Detroit or another team, eventually he's going to get his time in actual games. So in Dallas, both former Syracuse linebacker Justin Barron and former defensive back Elijah Clark, they were both waived by Dallas, but now they've been signed to the practice squad, and that's really good. The coaches there had said nice things about both of them in the preseason, so we'll see how that played out. And then in New Orleans, defensive end edge rusher Fidel Diggs, who had been waived, even though he had been picked in the NFL draft by New Orleans, I think in the 7th round, he had been waived during the 53-man cut deadline, but he has signed on with their practice squad as well, according to reports. And then Tommy Cutlets. Gotta love Tommy Cutlets. Tommy DeVito, who played at Syracuse and then went on to play at Illinois. And it had some nice moments over the last couple of years with the Giants, doing their quarterbacking. And he he got waived by the Giants, but then according to ESPN, I think it was Field Yates, said that the New England Patriots have picked up DeVito. So that's kind of cool. Um, you know, is he going to get a lot of time there? I don't know. Drake May's the starter. Josh Dobbs, I believe, is in the room there, but it was going to be hard for him and with the Giants because they have Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and then they picked Jackson Dart from Ole Miss in the first round. So I didn't, even though DeVito had some nice performances in the last few years, I didn't see. I felt like he was the odd man out. So we wish these guys well. We want them to do well in the NFL. Obviously, being on the practice squad is not ideal, but it's better to be on the practice squad than be out of the league altogether. But it was one interesting point with Jackson Meeks when I was going through my notes here to provide the update. I'm curious what you all think. Again, I like us to go back and forth here. So thinking about Jackson Meeks and his strong preseason, and he had a great season last year for Syracuse, All AC second team, I believe. Who do you think was the best receiver for Syracuse last year? And I say receiver, not wide receiver, because I think you got to throw Aranda Gatson the second in there. He's more of a traditional tight end, but a receiver, catches balls, receiver, whatever. So, he was an All-ACC and All-American performer. And then Meeks and Trevor Pena, who transferred to Penn State, were both All-ACC second team, I think. So who do you think was the best of those three? I mean, it's tough. Their stats were similar, and obviously Aranda plays a different position, and I don't know. I actually I'm posing this question to you, but I don't have an answer. I kind of expected Pena, even though he's had injuries in the past, to be good, and we all knew what Aranda did. So I don't want to say Meeks was a complete surprise because he came from Georgia and he's a veteran receiver, but his production wasn't near wasn't what it was at he didn't have the same production at Georgia he had at Syracuse. So I mean, he had a breakout year. So I guess if I had to say who was the most somewhat surprising, maybe Meeks. But they were all three were great. So I'm just curious what you think. All right, we're going to wrap up here with some comments from Fran Brown and just some more thoughts about this Tennessee game. So, Fran had his press conference earlier this week, and, he said a lot of complimentary things about Tennessee, which he should, and he always does that about the other teams because he's a classy dude. Fran Brown is, no nonsense, tough as nails, but he also has a big heart, and he's a kind guy, kind person. He's got high character. I'm so high on him, because of who he is off the field. But, he talked about Tennessee and he talked about Syracuse, and he said, listen, we have a talented team. In some spots, we have a young team, and we just got to keep getting better, and we got to keep getting tougher. Keep getting tougher. And then he talked, and other folks talked about this as well, whether it's Syracuse guys or Tennessee guys or folks in the media, talked about how certainly both Tennessee and Syracuse have talented rosters. Both of them had, overhaul from last year, whether it's the portal or guys exhausting their eligibility. But Tennessee is a bigger team. They're probably a stronger team. They're a bigger program. They probably have more NIL, more rev share, money talks. Not that that's the only thing, but let's just be honest. They play in the SEC. So, Syracuse is going to find out in 2 days how they match up against a bigger, stronger, I don't want to say more talented, but bigger, stronger team. And I mentioned this earlier in the week about the trenches. And, I think Tennessee has a really good defense. I think their offense, we're going to see how Aguilar does. And they got to replace their stud running back from last year. But they got big guys up front on the offensive line. And I think they're going to try and pound the ball on the ground against Syracuse. Syracuse's defensive line, both the tackles and on the edge, they've got a lot of veterans. They've got talent. But some of those guys are going to be in bigger roles. And are they going to just get dominated? I don't think they're going to get yeah, maybe they could get dominated the last year. Just get pushed back. So that toughness factor is going to have to come into play. And then you look at the linebackers, they have to replace two really excellent linebackers from last year in Marlo Wax and Justin Barron. And so, I hope that, Gary Bryant and Sparrow and Derek McDonald and others. Those are three of them, but not all of them. They're going to have to hold their own, whether it's in pass coverage or again, trying to contain the run, because I think Tennessee is going to run the ball a lot, especially given that Joey Aguilar is a talented quarterback, but he throws a lot of interceptions. And then in Syracuse's secondary, you've got safeties like Buxton and Deuce Chestnut and Devin Grant. They're more veterans, but the corners are young. Dimitri Samuel, young. Chris Peel, the transfer from Georgia, relatively young. Devian Kerr, young. But it's not just those guys. It's on the other side. I mean, Jonte Cook is an older guy in terms of his number of years in college, and he's going to be, I assume, one of Syracuse's starting wide receivers, and he's a former 5-star, but he doesn't have a ton of production in college. I would talk about Angeli. He doesn't have a ton of production. They've got an overhauled offensive line. Yassine Willis, that dude is jacked, and I think he's going to be really good. But he hasn't played a ton in college. He was playing behind LeQuint last year, LeQuint Allen, who's in the pros. Will Nixon, he had some prior experience at Washington, Nebraska, but he got injured last year, so he has some experience. And then they're running backs. Oh, geez. They're wide receivers and Valari, he's, trying to Jamie Tremble, they're trying to replace Ronnie Gatson. The receivers, I mentioned Cook, Daryl Gill, Yamari Hatcher, Russell, Justice Ross Simmons, the redshirt freshman, Jalen Hornsby and Emmanuel Ross. I mean, these guys all on paper are talented, but just lacking game experience. Does that mean they're not going to be good? No, not necessarily. And it happens everywhere. It's not just Syracuse, but this is my program, so I'm talking about Syracuse. They've got a lot of youth. They've got a lot of youth and a lot of guys stepping into much bigger roles. But again, that happens year after year because of NIL and mainly because of the transfer, guys just moving on. I mean, and in the NFL, in college football, it is a little different than college basketball because you don't have one and done guys. But still, with the portal, people are moving around all the time. So to Fran's point, is Syracuse going to be tough enough? I think they'll be locked in. I think they can win this game. I think it's going to be a close game. But do they have that enough strength? Enough? I don't mean like fight. I mean like strength, like muscle. They're going to get pushed around. And then when they're on offenses, their offensive line going to get pushed around. It's they got some talent there, but they're new to positions, just overhauled. So we'll see. They're going to come ready to play. But as Fran says, got to keep getting tougher and tougher. And let me tell you, Tennessee is a great first test for Syracuse. And it's in Atlanta, neutral site, but there's going to be more Vols fans there than Syracuse. And Tennessee's coming off being in the playoff last year. They're not as highly ranked in the preseason polls as other SEC teams. But, if Joey Aguilar has a good year and their running back room is as close as possible to last year, and their lines hold up, they've got obviously talent at the skill positions as well. They could be really good. So this is a really good first test for Syracuse. And again, I don't want to talk about moral victories, but at the very least, I hope Syracuse shows the college football world that they can hang with an SEC team and that 14 or point or 13.5 point spread was nonsense. And I think it is. I don't understand, and I'm going to close with this because I actually saw some other articles about this today. How you can have Syracuse as a 14-point underdog. It is a neutral site game when Tennessee has so many new faces as well. I get it. They're in the SEC. They made the CFP. Syracuse won 10 games. They were both 10-3 last year. So it is what it is. I can't wait for this game. We've got 2 more days to go. I really appreciate it, you all checking out the show. Again, Tell me what you like. Tell me what you don't like. We've definitely been focusing on football, especially this week leading up to the first game. But trust me, we're going to do plenty of basketball, plenty of football and basketball recruiting chatter and intel as well. But tell me what you want to talk about, because I'm throwing these, things out here. But if there's other stories or aspects of the programs that you want me to get into, trust me, I'm game for anything. Let me know. But thanks for tuning in. This is Neil Adler with Syracuse Central via the Fan Arch Network, and I will talk to you again tomorrow. Take care, friends.